Morning, Deirdre.
Good morning, Tom. How are you today?
Outer Banks in North Carolina, Kitty Hawk, the Wright brothers. You can see both of them there.
Right? I see both of them.
You see the SR-71, which is the fastest airplane we know of at the moment. And you also see the first one that flew in America called the Wright Flyer. And you can actually see the bicycle sitting there on the ground. These
Yeah.
guys were bicycle makers, as you probably can tell right there.
Yes, they were.
So anyway, would you like to introduce the topic today? Because this is somewhat relevant.
It's very relevant. It's the old and the new, and we're talking about the new here. In fact, what we're talking about is something you and I, Tom, have been talking about for years now in our teaching, that we see much of business education, information, thinking, publishing, and so forth based in the industrial age. But you and I both know that now in the digital age, a lot of the old wisdom doesn't apply. Marketplaces are different. Leading and managing the entity is done differently. Products and services are not only different themselves, but they're developed differently, and so forth and so forth. And yet, still, to this day, we see the writing and publishing based on industrial age consulting, research, and analysis. But again, as we know, because we've worked in digital age businesses, that business is different in the digital age. We talk about the digital platform on top of which all businesses operate, not just businesses, all of life operates these days on top of the digital platform. And on top of that digital platform, there are new forms of business organization. We have the rise of the business ecosystem. We have platforms. We have online commerce, and we have underlying that the need to adapt all processes and functions to digital work. At the same time, though, technology is shifting from being simply about devices and software installations to becoming strategic opportunities. That any strategic planning these days, if it is to be successful, must take into account the strategic uses of technology and then the ways the organization itself needs to change to accommodate those strategic uses of technology. Underlying all of that is the stronger requirement for building a culture to support the digital work, most often seen in the new digital workforce. We have workforces these days that range from the baby boomers down to the digital natives, and all of them think differently about work. Moreover, it's a global workforce with people from
Right.
different countries contributing overall. So, how does a leader lead this digital workforce to accomplish the work in the organization? And along with that is the need to share information and work across silos and departments, plus the need for personnel processes to change to support this new digital workforce. It's a fundamentally different way of working. That's the only way to describe it. And we've seen too many what I'll call educational aspects, whether it's courses or materials or so forth, try to keep up with the technology by simply slapping technology on top of what already exists. And that doesn't work because the digital age is fundamentally different
Yeah.
from the industrial age in ways that people have to think, in ways that people act, in ways that businesses operate, in ways that you even go about business. It's far too much change for you to simply try to do cosmetic work on what exists currently and expect that to work now. So you and I believe strongly, and we've done this in our work for the past several years, that we need to specifically teach how business gets done in the digital age and how leaders and managers must work to do their work successfully. So the topics we've been covering lately is how to become a digital age leader, how to develop strategies and execution plans that use technology and operate in the digital organization at a strategic level.
Mhm.
how marketplaces and business ecosystems operate in this digital age. And then this is a really important point for us, how to create value in these marketplaces in this digital age. It's different from the simple value creation of the industrial age. Then how do you build effective go-to-market plans given digital capabilities and your ecosystems and new ways of selling and marketing? And then how do you deliver results? And the results are not simply the old-fashioned financial metrics such as net profit, but nowadays leaders are expected to deliver results in many ways. Engagement with the audiences, success in creating relationships on platforms, building of ecosystems that drive certain work, and so forth and so forth and so forth. Then you need to, or a leader needs to build the team to run the digital organization. But what skills are needed? What roles are needed? How do you change job descriptions to meet the requirements in the digital age? How do you adapt the standard skills like financial modeling, accounting, business planning, and so forth and so forth? And then there's the big one that's captured a lot of attention lately. How do you understand the relationship between technology and society? And this covers things like ethics and cybersecurity and risks and policy and regulation and so forth and so forth. And then over the past 2 years, we've seen the stakes get even higher with the growth of AI, whichever form AI takes. And
Yes.
there are multiple forms, as you know, Tom. And then what are the uses? What are the use cases? We still haven't formalized use cases for much of the AI that's available these days. How do you build a strategy around AI? How do you execute on it? What personnel and skills, what workforce do you need to execute on AI plans? And so forth and so forth. AI just changes everything, whether it's robotics or automation or machine learning, or now into forms of generative AI. And all of those are treated differently, I'll say. So you and I have now put together a curriculum with technology and digital leadership in its DNA. That is, we are building around technology and around the new forms of leadership and management and organization that are needed for businesses to compete and succeed and deliver their results, all of the results in this new digital age. And with that, I've been talking for a while, Tom, so let me turn it over to you.
So that is a great description of what the world is today and where the world needs to go in terms of the way that we educate and the way that we mentor and the way that we build capability into our leaders and the workforce, actually. What this does is this is a way that we are looking at, it's a matrix of how we're looking at roles and capabilities in an environment of training and developing the capabilities of leaders in, we say business, but it's all aspects of building organizations, whether they be for-profit, not-for-profit, or governmental entities. And we've looked at it from the point of view of how, when somebody is sitting in one of these roles and they're saying to themselves, how do I now seek out advanced educational opportunities for myself to build skills? So a master's degree or some kind of offline or online program that's not institutionally based, or something that perhaps is institutionally based that is delivered in a brand new way that fits my role. So the first thing that you and I have seen, and I want to hasten to say that in all the things we do, we always say, this is an opinion of one. It's my opinion. It's your opinion. It's an opinion of one. There are many approaches, many thoughts on this. We haven't seen any that suit our way of thinking about the digital landscape as it exists today and how we see it unfolding in the future.
Yeah, Tom, let me take that one step further and say, yes, an opinion of one, but we're coming at it from the point of view of what does a leader need to succeed in the world today. So we have the leader in mind, the top level manager in mind, and what do these people need to build their businesses and create success and results in the world today. So that's where our opinion comes from. It's not random
Yes.
by any means.
Yes, very, very true. So we think about it from the point of view of how then does someone, again, whether they're early career, mid-career, or late career, how can they see themselves in this curriculum? How can they see themselves fitting in and desiring to go forward? And we see a little bit of an issue with that today as the standard programs exist in institutional learning for advanced business education. So our approach is to first look at it from the point of view of the roles that these people play. And we've called it part 1, 2, 3 just to neutralize it, but it's essentially the first level role. We call it business builder. And this could be anywhere from an individual contributor inside an organization, could be governmental, could be a not-for-profit, or it could be a for-profit organization, large or small. That individual contributor could also be an independent business builder. We call that an entrepreneur. Or if it's inside a large organization, we call them entrepreneurs. So the first level is this individual contributor. Usually this is someone that's in their first few years of work post undergraduate learning. And this is where you're contributing, you're leading processes, you're leading teams, and perhaps even you have an early management job. Then there's the second part of the career. And this is the people that are moving from what you and I would think of as early middle management, Deirdre, to C-suite jobs. So in that very large continuum there, which is the bulk of where the real leverage comes in an organization, because these people are about figuring out and managing how do you create an organization that leverages itself to create results at scale that will grow and scale. So their job is to build out that organization, create it, whether it's direct employees or it's indirect through people that you hire or people that are part of an infrastructure, supply chain, or so forth. And there's so much today available that to you in this form that many organizations don't have many direct employees, but they have a much larger ecosystem, business ecosystem, that provides a lot of the services and capabilities they need, which becomes complex because, as you said, that workforce is both. It has two different dimensions to it. It has a generational dimension, and then it also has a cultural dimension because everything is pretty global these days. And then the cultural dimension is strong, and each dimension has its own variability in what it looks for in how it functions. And then finally, part 3 is the CEO and beyond. This is the board director, the CEO, the managing director, however that is articulated in a governmental institution, not-for-profit or for-profit institution. These are the very top leaders of an organization. Their job is to lead and influence to be able to deliver the results that you expect out of the organization, to define the vision, mission, strategy for the organization, and then to also figure out for the organization, determine what are the new initiatives and ventures that will keep that organization healthy and sustaining over time in the way that you expect it to. The next dimension is the essential capabilities of each one of these. So in part 1 for the business builder, we think of it again in this matrix of what are they doing, how are they doing it, and why are they doing it? And those are the 3 capabilities that we look at for approaching the digital age. The first one is for business builder. The first one they really need to understand is the concept of opportunities and strategy. We define opportunities as you have something in front of you how can you take advantage of it? Whether you take advantage of it by, in a not-for-profit way, producing good works in the world or in your community or whatever your marketplace is, or whether it's a governmental institution where you're providing the services and needs of the entity or the society you're serving, or in a for-profit way, it's how are you contributing to a value exchange in the marketplace? And I'll get to that in just a minute. We talk about strategy as being an approach to something. Vision is how you see it in the future. What is your view? How do you envision it in the future? Mission is the organizational's responsibility or yours to be able to get there and deliver that. And then strategy is your approach to that mission that you've defined. So it's your how you envision it. What is the job? How do you approach the job? And understanding those concepts at a base level of I'm an individual contributor, I'm sitting here with work, how can I turn that work into an opportunity that provides value? And then how can I properly approach that work? And thinking in terms of how can that then be used by a process or by teams, and you can just imagine how that then proceeds up the chain to part two, where you're looking at leverage and then ultimately to the leadership. And then why are they doing it? It's this concept of opportunity value exchange. We just talked about this. And the concept of value exchange, we believe, is critical. And we don't think it gets enough nuance, Deirdre. We think that too much of the influence of value exchange is thought about in terms of value proposition, meaning what am I delivering to the market? How do they see it? And how do they determine it has value? There's an equal one that has to come back, which is what is the value you expect to get back for having delivered that value to the marketplace? So we call it a value exchange, Deirdre. It's how do you set up an equation from the beginning that determines what do you expect from the value you're providing to the marketplace? How do you deliver that value, and how do you ensure that that value occurs? Now, I'm going to stop here. We'll just run through quickly the rest of these, and then we'll take a breath and we'll come back and then take them deep, to each one of them deeper. But I thought this might be a good chance for you to weigh in on what we're talking about here.
Absolutely, the value exchange. You know, Tom, very much that many of our students forget about the concept of value exchange. They're so focused on seeing an opportunity and building a strategy and building an organization that operates, that they forget that there needs to be a purpose for all of that. And that purpose is to do something in the marketplace that gets them the return so that they can stay in operation. In a for-profit business, too many of our students forget that you need a cash flow to run your business. You need to get the cash from the marketplace, and you do that by providing value to the marketplace that customers will then purchase. In a not-for-profit entity, and Tom, you know, I've served on a lot of not-for-profit boards, that entities don't simply operate, although too many of them think in that mode that they just operate. They need to, these days, if they're going to get the funding to stay in operation, they need to do some project that delivers value in the marketplace that their target audience wants and then participates in, and that provides value back to the entity through their participation, through their comments, through their wanting to remain engaged with the organization, that then the funder can also enjoy and take credit for. This is a form of the indirect value exchange, perhaps one of those nuances that we'll get to more in the future. The point I want to make here is that too many entities forget that they need that value exchange in the marketplace so they can simply stay in business or stay in operation.
Or continue with the funding that they've been allocated
Yes.
wherever you may sit, whether you're a governmental entity, you're not-for-profit entity, or you're an entity within a large organization, or you're being funded by an institution or shareholders on the public market. So one of the concepts that we have in the way we think about this is, to us, these models don't differ. They differ in the way you monetize them and provide goods to the marketplace, and the difference in the actual value exchange. But the method is not different. We think when you don't understand these, I shouldn't say it that way, Deirdre, it's important to understand these distinctions among these, because the theories, the thinking is the same. It's how do you simplify those thoughts and those concepts to the highest level so they can be applied in these multiple disciplines of for-profit, not-for-profit governmental entities.
Right.
So part two is about the middle management team. It's about from the early middle management all the way up through the C-suite, individuals who report into the top level management, top level leadership of the organization. And this is where the most important thing here is understanding how the business functions from front to back, or from back to front. All the pieces that make it up, and how does it fit together and work? That's understanding that is the business model of an organization. Being able to articulate that and have that, we actually have people draw it for us, right? And in today's world, where much of it is electronic, and most people don't work for your organization directly, they're indirect, or the services and goods are coming to you in an indirect way that you then combine and provide value to the marketplace, however you choose to do that. That is a complex process. Along the way are, when you have these various chains of value, and people call them, from the industrial age, we call that value chains, and they are valuable here because they have to fit. They are the second level down of a business model. So being able to make sure that you, when you're in those roles, you understand and you can articulate and you can draw out, however you choose to do it, in words or charts or whatever suits your business, from how your business functions from front to back. Then being able to take the next step, and that's to quantify it, to convert it, to translate it into numbers. That's what a financial model is. This is not budgeting. Budgeting is another piece where you get in and you allocate resources for a specific period of time. This is, how do you now quantify that business model from front to back? How does it work from a numbers point of view? That's another level of abstraction. But from there, you can not start to measure beyond the P&L in your organization when you've done that. Then it's about the leadership and management you bring to be able to provide that leverage to grow and scale and properly and effectively and efficiently manage the organization. And then it's the investment value exchange. You're looking at various investments, the allocation of resources within the organization, to make sure that you know what those investment value exchanges are, and you now know how you properly allocate resources to those opportunities, those values that exist within your organization. That's a critical role for the middle management people to hone and develop and hone. Then the third level is the CEO, and this is about delivering results and ongoing success for the organization. That is your role. And also to do it by bringing experience-based leadership and influence to that process. And then ultimately, it's about the institutional value exchange. How does the institution exchange value with the marketplace? And that's a complex value exchange, obviously, from the way we've just described it. And it's also about, how does that value exchange work for your leadership team? And when I say that, I'm also implying that when you step back to the middle management piece, they're thinking about it as their people and the people that below them. How do I make sure they're seeing the proper value exchange for what they're doing for the organization to build it out, make it grow and scale to its expectations? So this is the concept, and the idea is, can someone in a first level job, can someone in a middle management job or somebody in a CEO, can they envision themselves in this environment being able to build these capabilities and see that it would add value to them as they build their career? And I'm going to stop now, Deirdre, and then let you articulate more about how you can use this.
Well, it's one way that someone can use it is actually to become aware of everything on this. It all becomes part of the job of leaders and managers. And I'm looking specifically here at the institutional and leadership value exchange. That too many leaders forget their role as the representative, the protector, the ensurer of the value of the institution in the marketplace, that they have a responsibility to make sure that the institution not only succeeds now and into the future, but succeeds in a good way. This can include, by the way, some of the social aspects that you and I have been talking about. That these days institutions need to pay a lot of attention to social responsibility in the workplace, to providing opportunities for all people to act in socially responsible ways, and so forth. And you cannot create any value exchange in the marketplace if you do not accommodate those responsibilities into the way you, as leaders, see your responsibility here. This is some of the leadership value exchange. Does the leader do the full job to protect the institution, to do right by the institution, to have the institution doing the right thing, and in return, get to be in the position of the leader of the organization? It's very interesting to me that the other value exchanges build up to the institutional value exchange, that the opportunity value exchange, which is the how you make money or how you deliver your services or how you get a return on what you provide, builds up to the allocation of resources, to giving back, to meeting the expectations of the people who allocate the resources or give you funds and so forth in the marketplace, to the point where the institution as a whole has its reputation for filling these other value exchanges at a level that has it operating as a socially responsible, productive, and enviable institution in the marketplace.
So you can look at this in a couple of different ways. Is how could you use this? So one of them is the way that you just described. You're an individual. How can you make sure that you have filled all the gaps, that you understand what you know and what you don't know, uh, and you have sought out ways to acquire that knowledge? And so one of the ways we think about this is that if you were an institution, and you and I have worked in institutions,
Yes.
but if you're in an educational institution, as you and I were, you can look at this and say that the first line, this part one, could be the traditional MBA approach. It's for somebody who has 3, 5, 7 years of experience. They would fit in that kind of an approach. And you could see where you could develop a curriculum around that, where that would be the key focus. The second level of focus would be on part two, and then less focus on part three. You could see also how, with an executive program, an executive advanced degree in business, whether that be a MS in technology management or an exec MBA, you would focus most heavily on part two, with a little bit less focus on part three and even less on part one, because you would expect that they would come to the table with part one as their experience and perhaps also their prior educational background. Then you can say, what about the alumni? What about the people that have graduated through this program, or people that have graduated elsewhere and are friends of your institution. They're providing part of the mentorship of whatever you're doing here. They would benefit by an emphasis on part 3, but it's not the traditional education that you provide to executives. They call it executive education or various aspects. We're not talking about that at all. We're talking about a program for people to be able to work into once they've graduated. How do they then participate in a program that keeps their capabilities sharp, keeps them honed, and keeps them expanded to the growth of the marketplace, and does it in a way that fits how they function today and how they'll function tomorrow. That's the idea. Now, you and I, we have a separate entity we call Deep Business, and we're focusing mostly on part 3 because we have a lot of former students who come from Columbia and other institutions we've guest lectured from or at, and they're part of that program for part 3. But we can easily envision that a university could pick that up as something. You could actually even just pick that up by itself and institute that and leave your degrees the way they are. But we believe that you have to be able to see yourself in these, because that's what creates what we call product market fit in the entrepreneurial world, or in the when you're looking to deliver a product to marketplace, product or service. Is about how it fits in the marketplace against the demand. To create good product market fit, the marketplace needs to see themselves be part of this. And if they don't see themselves in this, then that's when the demand becomes weak in this. And so we've spent a lot of time in the last years developing how do you make sure that you're fitting the market. Not that we're just creating something brand new because we've done some research in it and we think it sounds good and it's got all the bells and whistles and we're using the jargon, right? That's not what you and I have done here. But that's what the concept is behind this. So it may help if we have the ability to expand this another couple of layers. I know this could be excruciating for some. So we do have a separate video that is what we call a shallow dive. It's only about 15 or 20 minutes long, that will go through the highlights of this, so you're not dragged through the details if that's not of interest to you. But this next section, what we're doing here is taking this whole thing down a level. So you see we've replaced the 2 different descriptors inside the white boxes there underneath the green with what is the fundamental next layer. So when you're looking at opportunity and strategy, it's how do you as an individual contributor see going from opportunity to strategy? What is that process you go through? How do you get there? What are the steps involved? And what do you need to know to be able to do that? And that involves everything from understanding the market you're playing in. Even as an individual contributor, you have to start there, because Deirdre, if you are an individual contributor in a company or an institution of, that's not for profit, or in a government, and you don't understand the market you're in, you're missing a major part of what value you can provide to the organization in your own individual value exchange, as we talk about. And you'll notice the background here, Deirdre, is a radar screen. Right. And that's deliberate on your and my part, because every organization, every leader has a different radar screen picture. It's their way of looking at the marketplace. And what does that marketplace look like? And just like a radar screen, that marketplace is changing every second. Right. And you have to be thinking about your market changing every second, and you have to have your eye on that marketplace and start to learn and develop an instinct for that marketplace. And then as you develop, you expand the scope of that marketplace and that view. The second part is being a business builder. What does it mean to be somebody in a serious job seeking to be into a serious middle management or C-suite job. What does that mean? What does that job mean today versus what did it mean yesterday versus what is it likely to mean tomorrow? What are the aspects of it? We'll go into those details more in a moment when we unfold that next layer. And then it's the value exchange fundamentals. It's really getting to what you and I have been spending time on just a few minutes ago is understanding that and getting that internally in your system so that you start thinking about both sides of the equation, not just one. And usually the problem with it is it's not like you don't think of both. You don't think of them together. You think of them as disconnected things, and you're therefore not seeing the actual exchange and seeing what you expect that exchange to be. Because the exchange is not always dollar for dollar. Many times it is dollar for something else. You're spending dollars for something else in return that may beyond the P&L. And you have to be able to, through the business model, articulate that, measure it, and display it, and be able to convince others of that and how you're doing against that. And that's what defining the business model means. Part two, under the business model, that's what defining the business model means. It means understanding that aspect and being able to articulate that and go through the pieces I just described. And then managing the digital entity. As you and I know, that is a complex job today for the reasons we've already described about workforce and the multi-matrixed workforce that's constantly changing, and the aspect of we're sitting on a digital platform. We are no longer a business. We're not a car company anymore. We're a digital business. We're sitting on top of a digital infrastructure providing car business aspects to the marketplace. That's what we're doing. And all you have to do is talk to banks or hospitals, and they'll tell you that a hospital is a digital business providing healthcare services to the marketplace or banking services to the marketplace. They've had to realize that, and it's come about mostly because of the privacy and security of data requirements of their industry. And then it's the digital value exchange. Digitization has changed the value exchange, and it has made it much more complex and has many more outlets today. And how does that all play in what you're doing? And then that is about this leverage of digital business management. It's that middle layer that provides you the leverage that you need to grow and scale beyond just having individual contributors. And lastly, it is part three, the CEO. It's how do you create results in the digital landscape? Because the digital, when you're dealing as a digital infrastructure sitting on top of one with opportunities, those opportunities provide other aspects, and they provide many more ways of you being able to take advantage of those opportunities and create some form of value you deliver to the marketplace. How do you see that? How do you learn that? How do you convert that into an opportunity that you can value exchange with the marketplace and build over time? And then it's selecting and managing the digital workforce. I would say, and I know I'm telling you something you already know, if there's one thing that we hear more frequently from the CEOs we deal with, or the leaders we deal with at a high level, or the entrepreneurs we deal with, or the people inside businesses that manage teams, it's this point. How do I select these people? How do I manage them in this work environment? What's the job definition? What's the workplace look like? And how is the management process and the leadership process best done? And then there's a whole nother aspect about how do I develop and propagate the institutional knowledge, Deirdre, that in the investment in the industrial age, we got because we worked together for 12 hours a day. Sometimes when we're in our, well, seems like it never ended, right? From the time you started till the time you were running them. And you and I both been CEOs in businesses. So, but 7 days a week, sometimes 12, 18 hours a day, right beside people, developing that ability to transfer that institutional knowledge was a much easier process. And especially when in the industrial age, many companies, GE, IBM, I could keep going, Procter and Gamble, all had for GM, they all had first level management schools. They had middle level management, executive management school. I went to those at IBM. They were incredibly valuable. They really don't exist anymore. People need to be able to see where can they get that and why do they need it? And that's the purpose behind what we're trying to provide here. And then it's the value exchange piece in the marketplace. So, Darren, I'm going to stop here and let you take it from here for a second before we unfold this one more layer.
Right. Remember that this chart refers to capability focus. These are broad categories of capabilities. And as we go to the next chart, you'll see that we drill down into how do we convey these capabilities? What sorts of sub-skills are we building into the work we do in teaching? Now, one point I do want to make at this right now is that we include all of the courses that people need subsumed in the context of the framework of business in the digital age, that our students do learn how to do sales and marketing. They do learn how to do go-to-business plans. They do learn operations management and things like accounting and finance and so forth. All of the basic courses that one gets in MBA or Masters of Science programs and so forth. What we do differently is we make sure that we teach these skills at the level of knowledge of how these various functions operate in the digital age. For example, sales and marketing today is vastly different from the way it was even just 15 years ago, and so forth. And even something like accounting, how do you build in there all of the technology work, all of the different sorts of results and exchanges and so forth? That it's different when you think about all of this basic functionality in the digital age. So I'll just alert people, don't worry that we build all of this information into this curriculum that we've developed. And with that, Tom, maybe we go on to the third chart to drill down a little more.
So here we're talking about topics. So you can see we've expanded the white box again, and now we're putting out just 3 topics for each one. We have more, but we imagine that these topics, perhaps even some of the key aspects might change they will change as the marketplace develops.
Yeah.
And the digital aspects of business develop. Our sense or not our sense, we know it's going to go from just what you and I think of, Deirdre, as simple AI models, LLMs, and all the various combinations of things around that aspect, through to the use of quantum computing. We know that that'll be the next major thing, and advanced robotics. Those are going to be the 2 major areas that we'll see develop. You and I don't envision that the doomsday of artificial intelligence, as it's described by some in the marketplace, is what the next step is going to be. It'll be taken over by the use of quantum and robotics. Perhaps that's something to worry about after that. But and there are reasons for that, which we won't get into here, but we do explore in one of the programs that you and I have in Deep Business.
Right.
But now you're looking at the topics. So here, as we talked about, for each one of these, those topics are what one might think of as courses if you were an institution, or you might think of them as topics for a program that you would offer, for example, on part 3, as a program you would offer as a self-study program for a CEO that can take their time, doing self-study work on the side with a mentor from the institution, or from someone like us in Deep Business who have these programs. So, Deirdre, spend a second on how we envision, because there's another aspect to this, and it's all about the delivery of the content. Um,
We deliver in multiple ways. One thing we're doing, Tom, is to meet the needs of our students and the institutions we work with. We are developing a number of self-study courses where students can access material, work at their own pace to learn it, and then spend one-on-one time with one of us to think through and then get their questions answered about this material. But we find just with work schedules these days, it's much more effective to allow students to work at their own pace in certain of these areas. Another thing we do is we provide a lot of workshops, which are really skills building workshops where we work on specific topics. We're running a series right now on negotiation. How do you build your skills in negotiation to get the results you want? Another one we're working on, it has to do with knowledge. We're running a series of AI workshops, not just focusing on the types of AI. What we're doing is we're focusing on how leaders and managers get information about AI and then use that information to make strategic decisions. A very important thing and something that we know, Tom, leaders are really struggling with these days when the access to information is uneven and even the flow of information is decidedly uneven and too much of it's still in the industrial age, as I said earlier. Plus, we've also developed a series of recordings that people can watch to get our thinking on and hear our discussions on various topics. And these are topics directly related to leadership and management in the digital age. Plus, we have provided written material if people
yes.
prefer reading to watching the videos, in which we summarize what we talk about in the videos, point to publications that will help them understand the points being made. And then I'll just reiterate that throughout, we are available as needed for discussion directly with students on the various parts that we do. I think I've captured everything that we're
Yeah,
doing.
and so, just so everyone knows, when you say students, you also mean, as we had last night, we had a CEO roundtable, and you think about all those folks as students, and many of them are, well, they were all people that are in CEO level and leadership, serious leadership jobs. So they're students, but they're in that CEO category that you and I would talk about. But you refer to them as students, and it is an endearing way of putting that together. So
And establishing the teaching relationship. But
yes,
yes,
yeah,
we've had well, last night our students ranged from what, age 30 to age 50 or something.
yes, that's
And
probably right.
all of them who wanted to talk about aspects of being a leader. Good
Yes,
discussion, by the
from
way.
their different, because everyone was in a different industry.
Right.
And so the other part of this too that's really important, we think, Deirdre, is the understanding that there is a shift now. There are a number of philosophies of the workplace. Some believe the workplace is distributed and it will constantly and forever be a remote workforce. And all you have to do is listen to a handful of tech leaders, and they will tell you, we started as a remote business. We are a remote business. We're staying as a remote business, right? And very successful ones.
Right.
You have others who say, we are a in-office company. You are required to be in the office all the time. And if you're not, we will not have you as an employee. And there are some that are there, and they're very famous people that have high profiles and make that point. And there are all the variations in between. So one has to have programs that will allow for that, will enable that type of situation where people are not caught in not being able to be able to have the experience of doing that. And there are many organizations and institutions that do a great job of this. It's just that it needs to be done. There's another aspect of this, Deirdre, and we will go through some of this in a minute to do this, but there are two, and one of the things you talked about is programs that we think are critical to knowledge, to being able to do these jobs well. And I'll point them out now, and then we'll point them out as we go through here. One is the aspect of time and how it affects the speed of the workplace, the marketplace, and decision making.
Right.
And then the other is the risk-based judgments, because as speed can be your friend or it can be your enemy, time can be rather your friend or your enemy, no matter and it's going to be that way all day long, every day. And it's your job to be able to see that, look for it, and figure out how to work that to your advantage. And that's about judgment. That's
Yes.
it. And we have a whole seminar on judgment. We call it Judgment Symposium that you and I run together as part of Deep Business, and this is not just teaching it, this is much more about practicing the ability. And then there's the aspect, that's judgment. Then there's the aspect of risk-based judgments. So that's another segment of this, because in the for-profit world, especially when you get into the early for-profit world, when you're into what many call early stage funding, angel funding, personally funding things, right? And maybe a Series A from an institution, if you're lucky. That is high risk value exchange work. That's high risk decision making. And your judgments that you apply at that point have a very different approach than a judgment you would take on the US governmental, let's call it the jury system,
Yeah.
which is a pure compromise. It is 12 people who all have to reach an agreement. And that agreement, you and I know by definition, is the lowest level of risk that every single one of those people are willing to take. And that's the decision they'll reach. Or if they can't agree on that, they don't agree. And it's not a decision. It's a decision not to make a decision. That's the ultimate. And this is pretty much the case. If you go the spectrum we've talked about, from government to not-for-profit to for-profit, and then, for-profit goes all the way from certain industries in for-profit that are very, not risk averse is not the right word, their business model calls for a lower level of risk than the early stage venture or early stage angel market. We believe one of the key aspects that you have to impart to people, especially in this second part called part two, when you're looking at investment value exchange, are those dynamics. And if you don't know these and you haven't functioned, I worked in the government, I worked in not-for-profits, and I actually am involved in one right now, and so are you, by the way, and in for-profits. So we understand this whole world, but I think it's important that everyone understand that and understand where they sit and how they sit. That's why it's very difficult to have someone who's trained their life in for-profit, higher risk judgment decisions and has never dealt with governmental decisions and takes a government job. And many times they don't fit very well. And the institution almost rejects them. By the way, it happens the other way too,
Right.
and probably more often than not the other way, that doesn't work. And when you have people that have a heavy experience in the governmental world, and they really haven't dug into this other side, and they don't see that distinction. They don't see it clearly, and they don't articulate it clearly in how they think. It can become difficult. And we think that is a missing piece in what has to be part of serious advanced education in this type of work that fits directly into part two here. And then it is honed in part three.
Right.
And these are the kind of topics that we do. And by the way, this is not a lecture on it. This is where you and I do practicing with this. This is a practice thing that we get people together and they have 2 minutes to figure something out or 3 minutes to convince you about something. And they have to figure out first, what is it they have to convince you about? And then secondly, how are they going to do it? The first one is the judgment. The second one is the negotiation. We separate them out because they're two different things, and it becomes a little difficult until you become more advanced at it to be able to separate these out and deal with it. But we use the time as a bit of an enemy. Now we do it in an environment of fun and enjoyment, but it's wonderful to watch the advancement of people in their thinking and the honing of the skills of people that already do it well. And so I'm going to stop there, Deirdre, because you and I believe those are aspects that are not frequently built into this kind of work that we think are critical for being able to do this kind of work going forward.
And I think that's even more so given the whole disruptiveness and uncertainty in the digital age, and which adds another layer of responsibility, actually, to the leader's job and to managers' jobs in building execution plans and so forth. For example, we hear about new emerging technologies all the time, and a leader may identify it, think it's right for the company, build a strategy around it, but we don't know how that technology is going to develop. And meanwhile, the leader has to make decisions about hiring a workforce, changing the organization structure and operations and processes around this. And the world may be completely different 6 months from now. That's a high level of risk that, frankly, it has many of the people we work with, Tom, many of the leaders we work with, just devastated. They don't know how to think about this. So this is the sort of problem that we work with them on setting ways to think about these things, way to manage the level of risk so that they can operate fully in the workforce. It's fascinating. Time is another fascinating issue because there's such time pressure these days. But as you know, Tom, most of the best work requires stopping and thinking and taking your time to make decisions and doing all of the processes to make sure the product is right and so forth. So you have these varying tensions within business. And how does a leader manage those optimally to get the best work under time pressure and the need to use time and so forth? This is a very, very high level discussion of that whole topic. And there are many layers of it that we get into. But these are just things that people don't necessarily think about that actually make or break the work of a leader in an organization.
Yes. One more aspect to this that I think is worth pointing out, and then I'll take the chart down and we'll just sum up because we're approaching an hour, Deirdre, and I think that's about what most people would be willing to tolerate if they've been kind enough to stay with us this long. But when you look at this right-hand column here, that is called the value exchange column all the way down. If one were looking at it from this is a point of view of a curriculum,
Right.
you would think about that being your capstone project. That's the capstone project that starts when you enter the degree program and ends with a presentation, whatever it requires at the end. That is involved in the total thing, where you've got a business plan that's 100 pages long, written in good form. You've got an investment presentation, whether that's for a not-for-profit or for-profit or for a new initiative within a governmental agency. And you've got the ability to deliver it and deliver it well. And you've got the ability to approach any type of meeting that you're going into. You know how to, you've practiced. How do I walk into a room where I don't know if I've got a friendly or unfriendly audience? How do I deal with that? And you and I believe that these are learned. There are people that do this automatically. They do it beautifully. We have a couple of CEOs we work with that do this incredibly well.
Right.
Most people have to learn this, and they have to not just learn it, but practice it to the point where they are so comfortable it becomes natural.
Right.
We believe that has to be part of what they do. They can learn to practice on their own, but they have to have the way of practicing, the method for doing it. And we have an approach that we use that I've used for years in a different environment to do that. But that's what our vision is there. And we actually have had in one of the programs we had a CEO who literally took that and built a whole new business initiative for a very large not-for-profit that everybody would know the name of if we said.
Right.
That she came to us to build that opportunity. We also have another from the oil and gas industry that's getting ready to start with us to do the same thing, where they're already CEO level person and they want to start something new, and we basically run them down the right-hand side. And then if they don't have something they need, like they don't have fundamentals of accounting, we have the self-study courses. We also, you and I teach all those, right? We've taught marketing, you've taught marketing, we teach accounting, we teach business planning, we teach financial modeling.
Right.
You know, these core courses you and I teach, and we know how to teach them, but we think the real value is not that for people like us, it's for us to help frame this all in a way that suits the leaders of the future. And you and I are products, Deirdre. We came out of the industrial age MBA programs, right? So we know what that is, and we've taught in them, and that's where we see the weakness. And it's not about executive seminar, 2 days to go talk about it over after work. I mean, take 2 days off and go somewhere and have a nice executive. I mean, those are valuable and incredibly valuable from a networking point of view. We're talking about a life approach to learning.
Right.
Whether they be friends of the institution and they come to you later in life, and that's in part 3, like they do for us in Deep Business, or they're coming to you for their advanced study in business or in technology management or technology leadership or digital leadership. That's where they would take a program focused on part 1. That would be an MS program on early MBA, and then the executive versions of that, which would be for part 2. So that's how we see it as a way to approach the subject, going into sitting where we are today and going into where we believe it is going, and how it develops over time.
Mhm.
Would you like to take and summarize for us?
Well, certainly. I do want to slip in one idea here. I just want to reiterate how important the whole application part is. Too many students go through the traditional programs and they take a course here, a course here, a course here, and they never have to pull the whole thing together, so that when they leave the program, they're not really prepared for the roles they want to step into. One of the things we make sure with the ways we teach, with the ways we pull things together, is to make sure that students know how to apply the material. We are, in effect, certainly at the business builder level, preparing students to move into some fairly distinguished positions. Some of our students now have high-level positions in some well-known companies and so forth. And then for people higher up, we're teaching them how to connect ideas and how to pull things together so that they can see a way forward to improve their performance and the work of the organization. And we do that by focusing on the application, giving people the opportunity to work with us in hammering out problems and practicing in our workshops and so forth. And that's what I think creates a lot of the value that we provide in this marketplace to our students, whatever they are and at whatever level they are. So that in sum, Tom, what we've done is we've created an approach to teaching business in the digital age, which overcomes the issues related to the industrial age education, but brings the basic knowledge forward and reconstitutes it into the digital age so that people can function in the digital age optimally and build their careers in the digital age. We work with them looking forward, not looking backward. And I think that's the best way I can summarize it.
Yes, we're fortunate enough to do this moment with mostly C-level people, right? That are either entrepreneurs and they're young C-level people, or they're seasoned C-level already who sit on boards and all that. So
Right,
we see it from that point of view also, is what do they want and need? Why do
right,
they come to the things we do? And so this isn't really as much um, a selling point about what we do. This is more about what our conviction is about the way we believe this will develop in some form like this, or some aspect like this, to break the thinking open, Deirdre, because we believe it's difficult today for people in those three groups that we talked about: the business builder, the into the C-suite, and the CEO level and above, to see themselves in these programs. We believe
right,
they're having a difficult time doing that. And we hope that institutions will think hard about how they might take some of the ideas that we have here uh, and and help build out their future view of their programs so that they can be more uh, they can appeal even more
right,
rather than the names. You know, you and I have been fortunate enough to teach at great universities, some outstanding universities.
right,
Uh, and we've taught people that, I mean, I'm just thinking about the people we've taught most recently. Well, not just most recently, but when you and I were doing guest lecturing work recently, there were doctors, there were dentists, right, in this exec MBA program.
right,
It was wonderful.
right,
And they unfortunately didn't have some of this background. And there, even the way of thinking was very different. And we also had a CTO from a a division CTO from a very large chip manufacturer. And they're brilliant people. And they love this kind of thing, the way this is the way this is thought about. They love it, and they love now supplementing their distinguished careers with this kind of material, because in their mind, and also in ours, it has to match.
right,
These people are, I mean, one of the people was someone that I found incredibly intriguing, and she was running a very large hospital system here in one of the states that you and I frequent, where I frequent, along with Massachusetts and New York. And um, fascinating woman,
right,
not America's, didn't speak with an English accent. I mean, so we help people get over this idea that, look, talent is talent.
right,
Quality of the talent is what everyone really cares about. And that's,
right,
you know, as one of our favorite uh, C-level people says, you know, I may speak with a deep accent, but I don't think with one, and that's for darn sure. And neither did she. Uh,
right.
these other people that were really fun and wonderful to deal with, but we think that we have to make sure that our business education matches that, because these people are doing things at incredibly high levels and they're going with the market.
Right,
They're right at the, I mean, she's right at the market. So is the fellow from the chip manufacturing organization. And so is the woman that ran her own dental practice.
right,
We're right at the market. We have to be with business right at the market. Otherwise, we're not helping them. And
right.
I think we not only have to be at the market, Deirdre, we have to anticipate the market, and we have to see where it's going and move ourselves in that direction.
Absolutely. And we spend a lot of time making sure that we know what's going on and can anticipate the market and can lead our students into the future that way.
Yes. And if anything, trying to impart to them the ability for them to see it. and
Yes,
them to internalize it and them to be able to make these judgments and them to take advantage of the opportunities, see those up. We may not see the opportunity, but they can. But we know we've helped impart techniques and capabilities in building those capabilities. That's what you and I love to do.
it's what we do love to do.
Been a pleasure.
Always a pleasure, Tom.
Okay,
Okay,
bye, Duda.
so long.